Welcome. I call this meeting to order.
5:30 stop with the House Resources, so I just want you to be aware of that we cannot go beyond 5:30. Why don't I open this, Ms. Shannon, then I'll come to you right away. Bienvenue.
Welcome to meeting number 49 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Pursuant to 108.3G of the Standing Orders, the committee is meeting today on Systemic Barriers Correctional Service Canada, Report 4 of the 2022 reports of the Auditor General of Canada.
To the Auditor General, Karen Hogan, Auditor General, Carol McCalla, Principal, Stephen Mariani, Director, and then from Correctional Service of Canada, I have Anne Kelly, the Commissioner, Alain Tousignan, the Senior Deputy Commissioner, and Larry Motiak. Do I have that correct, sir? Thank you. Very good. Larry Motiak for the Assistant Commissioner Policy. Ms. Shannon, how would you like me to proceed? Do you want me to recognize you, or do you want to hear from the witnesses first? This is a point of order.
Read the agenda.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. We all received the amended notice for this meeting, asking for 20 minutes of committee time at the end of this meeting. And I have to say there have been some discussions, not with everyone, but there have been some discussions that this is a very important meeting. We want to hear from the witnesses, yes, and we want to have the full time, which we have been very good at doing at our previous meetings, to have full rounds. So I don't want to speak any more on that, but I think there are other members that will agree with that. So if we can move the committee business to Monday, we'd like to see the full meeting today. Full meeting with the witnesses.
So I don't know if you want I'm giving you my response. The problem is every one of these meetings are important. And of course, whenever something comes along, there's always the risk of going into committee business. Next week, obviously, we're dealing with Arctic waters, and then after that, cybersecurity. I think we should proceed with the committee business today. We received a letter from the auditor, which I think is noteworthy, and its next steps. Now, what I'm trying to do is that by putting it at the end and squeezing it in, and I've allotted 20, but if the questions are still overlapping, I'm not going to just end at 20. If we're still on the roll, I'll go into the business time, and the business time is to both kind of discuss the auditor's letter, which is really a reiteration of a response to us in committee last week, and there is a motion that is coming, but with the 5:30 hard stop, and I know a few members here are very good at talking out the clock. It is not my intention to allow any time for that debate. It is just a discussion of the letter. What you're asking, it just pushes off the inevitable into next Monday. I'd sooner deal with it today.
If I may,
yes.
Chair? We do have 2 meetings allotted to Arctic waters, so I think that there's more time for that topic than what we have today. But I look at members, and I'm asking if members are in agreement. We'd like to keep this. Donc le fait qu'on veut avoir tout.
The fact that we want to devote the entire meeting today to this topic, I discussed it with Natalie, and she is in agreement. This meeting today is very important.
I'll look for. Is there unanimous consent to move off the committee business to next week? It's not my intention to move it on my own, but if there's unanimous consent, I will. Otherwise, let's get on with the. We're still going to deal with it, right? We'll just deal with it in a couple days. So I'm hearing no opposition, so in that case, I will move the committee business to the last 20 minutes to Monday, which will be in public as well. Okay, very good. Ms. Hogan, thank you for your patience, everyone. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to discuss our report on systemic barriers, which was tabled in the House of Commons on May 31st, 2022. I would like to acknowledge that this hearing is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Joining me today are Carol McCullough and Stephen Mariani, who were responsible for the audit. In this audit, we examined whether Correctional Service Canada, or CSC, was meeting the diverse needs of its offender population. We found that CSC had failed to identify and eliminate systemic barriers that persistently disadvantaged certain groups of offenders. The overrepresentation of Indigenous and Black offenders in custody had worsened with higher security classifications, the late delivery of correctional programs, and the delayed access to release on parole. We raised similar issues in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and this audit found that CSC had done little to address the differing correctional outcomes, particularly for Indigenous and Black offenders. Disparities were present from the moment that offenders entered federal institutions. For example, Indigenous and Black men were placed at maximum security levels at twice the rate of other offenders and made up half of all maximum security placements. We also found that Indigenous women were placed at maximum security at more than 3 times the rate of non-Indigenous women and made up almost 70% of the women in maximum security. The reliability of CSC's custody rating scale for initial security placements had not been validated since 2012, and its use for Black offenders had never been validated at all. We found that corrections staff frequently overrode the scale's security rating to place Indigenous offenders at higher security levels with little consideration of culturally appropriate and restorative options. Correctional programs are intended to prepare offenders for safe release on parole and support their successful reintegration into the community. We found that timely access to correctional programs had continued to decline across all groups of offenders since our earlier audits, and it worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic. By December 2021, only 6% of men offenders had completed the programs they needed before they were first eligible to apply for parole. Même si la majorité des
While the majority of offenders were released on parole before the end of their sentences, Indigenous offenders remained in custody longer and at higher levels of security until their release. Since the onset of the pandemic, Indigenous and Black offenders were more likely to be released at their statutory release dates. Indigenous and Black offenders were also more likely to be released directly into the community from maximum security institutions. In particular, Indigenous women made up 2/3 of those released from maximum security at women's institutions and were unable to benefit from a gradual transition to the community that supports their successful reintegration. With respect to its workforce, CSC's efforts to support greater equity, diversity, and inclusion fell short. CSC committed to building a workforce that reflects the diversity of its offender population, but it had not yet established a plan to bridge these representation gaps. We found workforce representation gaps across institutions with regards to Indigenous and Black offenders, as well as gender representation gaps among staff at women's institutions. This is our 4th audit since 2015 that shows poor and worsening outcomes for different groups of offenders. CSC has taken little concrete action to change the seemingly neutral policies, procedures, and practices that produce these outcomes. CSC acknowledged in November 2020 that systemic racism is present in the correctional system. It is long overdue that CSC remove the systemic barriers identified in this report. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Hogan. Next, Commissioner Kelly, 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of this committee. I would also like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Joining me today are Alain Toussignan and Dr. Larry Motiuk. It's a pleasure for me to appear today to discuss our actions relevant to the Auditor General's report on systemic barriers. I thank the Auditor General and her office for their recommendations, all of which we have accepted. I will focus my remarks today on the highlights of our progress to date. Through this report and other incidents in the news, we are reminded of the existence of systemic barriers and racism within the criminal justice system and how we collectively need to do more. Since becoming commissioner, I've made it a priority for CSC to be safe, respectful, diverse, and inclusive as an organization. And CSC continues to make this a priority while at the same time doubling down on our efforts to overcome the operational disruptions caused by that pandemic.
Overrepresentation of Indigenous and Black offenders within the federal correctional system. We know that the rate of admissions to federal custody of Indigenous peoples continues to grow, as it has for the past 10 years. For example, last year, Indigenous offenders represented 35% of our admissions. While CSC cannot influence the decisions that bring offenders into our custody, it is our responsibility to improve outcomes for offenders by providing them opportunities for effective rehabilitation. We have implemented a number of initiatives to accomplish this and are in the process of hiring a Deputy Commissioner for Indigenous Corrections. We have also been working to develop a national Black offender strategy to identify new opportunities to address Black offenders' unique lived experiences and the barriers they may face. I am encouraged that our efforts are yielding positive results. For example, in 2021-22, high percentages of Indigenous and Black offenders were not readmitted to federal custody within 5 years following the end of their sentence. In her report, the Auditor General raised concerns about CSC's Custody Rating Scale, or CRS. The CRS is one component of a systematic and comprehensive process in how we assign an initial security level to federally sentenced offenders, but it does not define the final placement decision. In addition to conducting ongoing research to ensure our actuarial tools are reliable and valid, CSC signed an MOU with the University of Regina, who is working at arm's length to develop an Indigenous and gender-informed security classification process. CSC is also undertaking an extensive validation exercise of the Custody Rating Scale for Black men offenders and a revalidation for women and Indigenous offenders in collaboration with 4 external experts. One of the ways that we can better meet the needs of offenders' needs is through correctional programming. Results indicate that CSC's correctional programs are equally effective across a broad range of ethnic groups. Offenders who participate in programs are less likely to recidivate than non-participants, regardless of ethnic background. But as the Auditor General has indicated, timely access is key. Offenders who are serving short sentences and have an identified program need are being prioritized. And in fact, we have already seen an increase in the percentage of those who complete their program prior to their first release. We also have a virtual correctional program delivery initiative, which will modernize program scheduling, referrals, and assignments, and ultimately improves offenders' timely access and completion of correctional programs.
In addition to the actions that I have mentioned, we also strive to better reflect the diversity of the offender population in the staff who work with them. The CSC has set ambitious representation objectives for Indigenous peoples and visible minorities in its workforce, which take into account the offender representation at each of our facilities. CSC is also formalizing its gender representation objectives at women's institutions. Currently, all 5 wardens of our women's institutions and healing lodges are women and include representation from Indigenous and visible minority groups. In addition, on average, 75% of primary workers in our women's facilities are women. Since the publication of the Auditor General's report, we have completed an employment system review, which has informed our 2022-2025 comprehensive plan for employment equity, diversity, and inclusion.
It has been a few years, and I want to thank all of our employees for their ongoing hard work, dedication, and commitment as we continue to balance many priorities and make important progress on numerous fronts. As Commissioner, I remain steadfast in my commitment to support positive outcomes for Indigenous, Black, and other racialized Canadians in the correctional system. This includes taking meaningful action to address the recommendations made by the Auditor General and the correctional investigator and other external advisory bodies to sustain lasting positive change. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Turning now to our first round. The first 4 members will each have 6 minutes. Mr. Brock, thank you for joining us today. You have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for your attendance today and all the hard work that you put into this report. I want to preface my questions by informing the witnesses and informing other members of this committee that I come to this particular committee today prior to this election, prior to my election in 2021. I had 30 years of legal experience as a Crown prosecutor. I was in the trenches dealing with systemic racism in the criminal justice system. And first question will be to you, Ms. Kelly. You made a broad statement with respect to the criminal justice system generally, although this particular study is about the Auditor General's report regarding correctional services. But my first question to you would be, do you acknowledge that in addition to that broad statement, that courts across this country, prosecutors across this country, are actively taking steps to reduce the over-incarceration rate of Indigenous inmates, men, women, and youth, as well as Black inmates, men, women, and youth, through the use of specialized courts, such as the Indigenous Peoples Court, gang-related courts in some of the larger centers, things of that nature? Do you acknowledge that?
I believe there are some steps being taken, but I can only speak to what we see, obviously, in terms of the offenders that are admitted within our custody. And what I can say is that regarding Indigenous offenders, unfortunately, the admissions are growing. And as I said, last year, it was 35% of our admissions were actually Indigenous offenders. So that's what I would say.
So I think that begs the question, why do we have a year-to-year increase in the number of admissions for Indigenous offenders and Black offenders? I take a look at the Auditor General's report, and I may be naive in this because I didn't have all the documentation to prepare for my attendance today, but when I take a look at the 29-page report, I don't see any data to support as to what the predicate offense was by which these individuals found themselves in the federal institution. I see no reference to age demographics with respect to these inmates. Are these some of the data points that you actually collected? Yes?
Certainly in CSC we have that.
Okay.
Yes. So what I can say, for example, for Indigenous offenders, they tend to be younger than other offenders. Their sentence lengths, unfortunately, have become longer over the time period, and more serving indeterminate sentences. Unfortunately, there's been a profound change in offense type composition, with more serving sentences for murder or Schedule 1 offense. And combine this, it's climbed to 84%. And also they have very high needs. So the high need rating has gone up to 90%, up from 86%. So we absolutely collect that data.
So we have youth committing murders that are Indigenous and Black. You also mentioned Level 1 or Class 1 offenses.
One, yes.
Schedule 1, does that include significant dangerous firearm convictions?
It's more violent, yes.
Very violent, okay. So needless to say, a very longer sentence, correct?
Yes, that's what
And
we're
when you
seeing.
have violent offenses such as homicides and random shootings, things of that nature, you'd agree with me that the overriding sentencing determination by a court is not one of rehabilitation, but rather separation from society. Do you agree with that?
Well, again, for us in CSC, they come to us, and our job in CSC is to provide them with opportunities, so programs and interventions to actually try to rehabilitate them so that they can become law-abiding citizens. And that's our mandate, and that's what we work. Yes.
Okay, and another point I want to draw is that a lot of these offenders unfortunately come from very significant socially disadvantaged groups. Quite often, socially economic poverty, lack of education, lack of a parental fostering network, things of that nature. And quite often, we ought not to be surprised by this, they are funneled into a gang lifestyle. Did your data show that as well?
Yes, the data shows that in terms of gang affiliation, it's higher.
That's right. In fact, I'm looking at Stats Can from 2021, and that of all of the gun homicides in Canada, 297 gun homicides in Canada in 2021, almost 50% were gang-related. And when you dig even deeper about the composition of the gangs, close to 50% of all gang members in Canada are a makeup of African Canadians and First Nations. Does your data support that as well?
Yes.
Right. So it ought not.
Mr. Brock, I hate to interrupt you because I know you're on a line of questioning here, but your time has expired.
Thank you.
But I believe we'll be back to you later on. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Chair, thank you, and I'd like to thank the witnesses for appearing here today and for the important work that you do. I was a member of this committee, Public Accounts Committee, 2016, 2017. We probably looked at the 2015 report as well. And I remember being very disturbed about the overrepresentation of Indigenous individuals and racialized individuals in the prison system, and certainly at that time there were many expressions of the goal of rehabilitation being the primary goal of our prison system, and we were failing at that. What is different this time, Commissioner Kelly?
In terms of Indigenous offenders, right now we're at 32% of the population is Indigenous. For women, it's 47%. For Black offenders, it's actually gone down. It used to be 9.2%. It's gone down to 8.7%. Since 2017, we've put in place a number of initiatives. So, for example, for Indigenous offenders, we've created what we call Indigenous intervention centers in some of our institutions. And what happens there is that they get programs earlier, and in terms of Section 84 releases, where you have to engage the Indigenous community, that starts right at the beginning when they are admitted to federal custody. And basically, they work with what we call an Indigenous Community Liaison Officer if they want to go back to the Indigenous community. The other thing is we have pathways in our institutions, And basically, pathways can be arranged in the institution where offenders can continue to practice their culture and traditions. We have Indigenous correctional programming, so it's culturally appropriate for the offenders. We also have, after they complete a program for Indigenous offenders, it's an automatic review of their security classification. And we also have healing circles. So when they go before the parole board, instead of the just a normal hearing, they have a healing circle. So we've done a lot.
Does not exist back in 2015, 2016, 2017?
I'm not sure. That's actually, it's the parole board. So I'm just going through the beginning of sentence up until release. The other thing is we've trained 1,500 employees. We've done the blanket exercise, so has all of the executive committee as well. In terms of representation, 10% of our staff are actually Indigenous. We have around 140 elders, and we have a national elders working group as well as a national Indigenous advisory committee. And actually, we're meeting with them in a month, and we talk about barriers. We talk about what's going on in the institution, and they provide advice to me. The other big thing is we are in the process of hiring a deputy commissioner for Indigenous corrections, and hopefully that's going to help advance our mandate. But I would say that certainly we are working really hard, and we have different initiatives that are not specific to just Indigenous, but to all offenders. So, for example, we have digital education pilot projects where it's the curriculum from the province, and we have received very good positive feedback from the offenders. And we have what we call the virtual correctional program delivery, where we will be able to have offenders that require a program get together from different institutions. So that's going to be the class, and it's going to be done virtually, but with a teacher in the classroom. And that's going to help us basically meet the demands for program, because program is key in CSC.
And on that note, Commissioner, can I ask you, because my colleague mentioned about the social economic upbringing of many of these offenders, young people who find themselves then in prison for extended terms. Are these programs are there any studies that tell us that these programs are able to, they can't replace a healthy upbringing, but are they able to make a change in those lives?
Yes, so the Indigenous, and certainly Larry can speak more to this, but the Indigenous correctional programs have been developed with Indigenous people. And clearly with Indigenous people, we see that there's a lot of trauma as well. So that's included in the program too. There's elders that participate in the program to help them as well, so they can speak about what they've experienced. And in June 2019, with Bill C-83, actually considering the Indigenous social history was enshrined in legislation. And we've done a ton of training on Indigenous social history. What I will say, though, is that how it translates in the recommendation and the decision, we still have a little bit of work to do, because we actually are very good at gathering the information, the Indigenous social history, but then it's looking at all these factors when we make recommendations and decisions. There's room for improvement.
And that is all the time. Thank you very much. Bonjour, Mr. Villemure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Villemure. 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you all for being here today for such an important topic. Ms. Kelly, I would like to refer to the report going back to 74 in relation to discriminatory practices. And in years, there were some 70 specific recommendations for Indigenous persons, and this in the annual reports. Do you have anything positive to present after 50 years? After 50 years, I'd say we have done a great deal of work. For myself, I have been with Correctional Services Canada for some 40 years. I believe in the mandate to encourage offenders to become respectful of our laws. They're going to become our neighbors, your neighbors, and what is clear is that we want them to be in better off when they are released compared to when they came into our institutions. So, and I take that very much to heart, as does Alain and Dr. Motyuk. In 50 years, there certainly has been a great deal of progress made. And I would like to share an anecdote. I think it is relevant. A number of offenders do write to me, and I send out messages every week to the staff and to the offenders. Every week, an offender wrote to me, an Indigenous offender, who told me that he was not comfortable in the institution, but he has met people on his journey, correctional officers, program officers, and he decided to change his life. This offender will now obtain a bachelor's degree in psychology. And what the offender asked me as a commissioner was, when I go back to the community, and I will have proven myself, can I come back to an institution to help my fellow Indigenous offenders? Thank you very much for that. And I do believe in rehabilitation as well. So you've mentioned a number of activities, programs, and so forth. And I would like to know, clearly, their efforts and training programs, and many have learned a great deal, but have you been able to assess their comprehension, or have you only been able to give the training? Are you talking about the offenders? No, I'm talking about the staff at CSC. Well, we do provide training, and CSC is in the midst of changing culture. And what we have done is an audit of the culture in our services. As to the training we provide, it is clear that we see amongst the staff more diversity. That's number one. But we also examine the offenders' grievances that they file against the staff. So we examine a number of issues to see if there are improvements to be made. Obviously, training serves its purpose as well as for the programs. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Motyuk, your research profile is impressive. I have the same question. Do you measure the understanding, the comprehension of your staff when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and so forth? Do you measure their comprehension of that?
A couple ways to answer that would be, first and foremost, we do staff surveys. We've done them in the past. We also work closely with our frontline service providers to ensure that they have good comprehension of understanding of the core program components they're delivering. And we certify them, too, in terms of their assessment tools that they administer. So, yes, we do assess them and we certify them in terms of their understanding of the application of these measures, as well as the programs they deliver. And then we measure the results in terms of reductions in reoffending. And our evaluations clearly indicate that we have significant reductions in reoffending for Indigenous people, all offenders, if they complete their programs.
La mesure de la compréhension.
Now, this measure of comprehension interests me a lot because you can attend training and not have understood a thing. Now, Ms. Kelly, your efforts in terms of diversity and inclusion, how does that relate to the offenders? Could you repeat your efforts in terms of equity, inclusion amongst your officers? To what extent does that change discrimination against your offenders? Well, our diversity efforts, what we've done since 2021, is we have set representation objectives that are truly ambitious. And the way we do this is that we examine the workforce availability. I'm sorry I didn't have the word in French, but I'll give you an example. In Prince Albert, we have the Saskatchewan Penitentiary that has 70% Indigenous offenders. What we do now, I mean, in our equation to reach our objective, 70% will be as of the available staff, and 30% of the equation will be the number of Indigenous offenders we have. 30% is the percentage of Indigenous offenders we have in the institution. So for institutions where we have more Indigenous offenders, we'll see to it that we have the diversity amongst our staff. And Alain, and excuse me, Ms. Kelly, my time is up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I find it troubling. I often come to this committee, and I often find that the Auditor General is yelling at the top of her lungs about the conditions that are often facing Indigenous and Black people in Canada. And these systems continuously stay the same. I'm an MP that actually went and visit people in these penitentiaries. I went to the Edmonton Women's Penitentiary and asked them what their needs were, and they're great. And I'm hearing my colleagues ask questions, and obviously being a Crown prosecutor doesn't give you a kind of education that would be necessary to understand the conditions of Indigenous people and how they get up to that place. Because this is not an Indigenous and Black issue. This is a Canadian justice issue. It's an issue of our justice system, not of the individuals to which they fail. The residential school system, the 60s scoop, the planned targeting and genocide of Indigenous women. It's clear. And this isn't me saying this. This isn't even many Indigenous people who've been saying this. I want to give light to the words of Auditor General. A quote from just today. And I hope all members will pay attention to this really important piece. I'm looking at my Conservative colleagues in particular, that they listen to the important pieces that this has to offer, because I often hear them talk about get tough on crime without understanding the people that they're getting tough on and why they're there. She says, quote, "This is our fourth audit since 2015 that shows poor and worsening outcomes for different groups of offenders. CSC has taken little concrete action to change the seemingly neutral policies, procedures, and practices that produce these outcomes. CSC acknowledged in November of 2020 that this systemic racism is present in the correctional system. It's long overdue that CSC remove the systemic barriers identified in this report. These are real people. Why is it taking so long to address what is the very basic human rights of people? I had to look these women in the eyes and tell them that I was going to try to do better for them. It's tremendously difficult. And the member from Edmonton West, that penitentiary is right in your backyard, the Edmonton Women's Penitentiary. And I asked them, I don't care if you've been there, I'm wondering if you've listened to them. And they're asking for help. The conditions in those prisons are terrible. I've spoken to the elders who assist there, and they're overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. One elder, hundreds of people they're asked to serve. And to the commissioner, I don't know how to put this in any other way, but these people aren't all the same either. We have one federal penitentiary for Indigenous women in the entire prairies. From Winnipeg to Saskatchewan to Alberta, they're all lined up in one penitentiary and dropped off in my community of Edmonton-Griesba, where they find themselves houseless. They find themselves without support and are forced into crimes of desperation and exploitation. Our systems are failing them, simply, especially CSC. I am lost for words. The reports are there, the numbers are there, and all I can do is ask that we see these people for who they are and the conditions that they're in. They're not there because they want to be there. They're there because this country has forced them to be there. Whether it's because they've taken their children, who have spoken to elders who are in the maximum security prison there, old women who've been there for decades because they fought for a desperation to find their children and failed in doing that. And the first question I asked them when they were there was, can you help me find my daughter? This is real people who are missing their family members, and they can't even go visit them because they're from Winnipeg and their daughters are missing and they want to talk to their family. This is one of the most egregious reports I've seen. And these people can't wait. They're going to die in this place without ever seeing their family again. We need to help these people. They're not there because of reasons within their control. And I'll probably run out of time in this segment to ask any questions, but I hope that you see how real this is. It's taken people like me to get elected to get this message all the way to this place, because I haven't heard it once yet. And I hope my colleagues can see the need to reframe our minds on this. We need a policy in Canada that reforms these systems away from the simple slogan of get tough on crime, because that contributes to genocide in this country. Yes, people who break the law should be punished. But those who find themselves in conditions because of what Canadians have done, you need to do some reflection. How have Canadian laws disproportionately impacted these people? My relatives. Those Gladue reports are important pieces of information. And I hope Crown prosecutors also do their work in understanding the value of those reports when seeking so desperately to put our people in jail. It's important that we do this work. It's called by elders who passed away now. The calls to action in the TRC are clear. And in my continued statements later on, I'll ask about the TRC and what you've done.
And Mr. Desjardins, I will end it there for you, but thank you very much. That is your time. Turning to our next round, please. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Mr. Brock will go next, and then I'll go in the round after.
Pardon me? Oh, Mr. Brock, pardon me.
Yep.
Back to you for 5 minutes, please.
Chair.
Pardon me.
And I truly appreciate the words of my colleague, Mr. Desjardins. They were appropriate. They were heartfelt. I thank you for that, sir. And I do take to heart what you had to say. One little pushback. I prosecuted in Indigenous Peoples Court for 10 plus years. I made a difference in hundreds of lives of Indigenous offenders. I've seen successes. I've seen more successes than I've seen defaults and tragedies. So I just want to say that prosecutors do take Gladue reports very serious, but thank you for your intervention. Going back to you, Ms. Kelly, I just formulated a question and I ran out of time in the first round. When I talked about the very large, almost 50% of gangs that are composed of blacks and Indigenous offenders, those individuals committing very serious, violent offenses that are harming people, killing people, exposing great danger to communities. It's probably no wonder to me, and I hope you share the same view, that upon their initial placement in a federal institution, that given the nature of the conviction, which quite often is not a first-time conviction, but rather a pattern of dangerous-like convictions. You don't wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm going to join a gang and I want to kill somebody. It's often a series of tragic mistakes that lead you to ultimately end up in prison. So my point is this, it ought not to be a surprise to the auditors and to the Auditor General that the system itself is classifying these individuals who are deemed at high risk at the maximum level. Do you agree?
Well, again, we have a security classification process. We take into account a lot of information, police information, judge's sentence. We also have the custody rating scale, which is an actuarial tool. And then the parole officer looks at everything, including the Indigenous social history or Black social history, and then we make a determination. But and that's how we classify offenders.
Paragraph 3 of Ms. Hogan's report gives an example. Indigenous and Black men were placed at maximum security levels at twice the rate of other offenders and made up half of all maximum security placements. I took a look at page 8, Exhibit 4.4, and I see that while that percentage does seem to be accurate, the bigger picture, which is not contained in the opening statement of Ms. Hogan, is the fact of the matter is that most, like almost 3/4, if not 90%, of all Black and Indigenous offenders end up classified in minimum and medium security. Looking at Exhibit 4.4, do you see that? A combination of 89% for Indigenous offenders ended up in minimum and medium security, and Black offenders was 85%.
So what I can say is the concordance rate with our actuarial tool and the final offender security level is 75%. And then you use the actuarial tool is used to anchor your judgment. But in terms of Indigenous offenders, it means that in 25% of cases, they're either overridden or underridden, and they're underridden more times than they are overridden. And it's the same for Black.
Have to factor in the nature of the conviction. Does your data make a distinction between those ultra-serious convictions, those offenses, versus the lesser serious offenses that still warranted a 2+ year sentence?
Absolutely. So our custody rating scale takes into account, and this is one component, but age at time of first sentencing, criminal history, offense severity, sentence length, so all those factors.
Okay, so when I look at
Very quick question, Mr. Brock. You have time for a very quick question.
When I look at Exhibit 4.4, is that a combination of all offenders of all types of convictions, or is that only the really serious ones that I've been prefacing, the homicides and the significant weapon offenses?
And equally, Ms. Kelly, a relatively quick answer as well, please.
Yes, I'm looking at 4.4.
Generalized or is it specific?
I can help, Mr. Chair. It is all. We didn't subcategorize. It is all offenders in all
Okay.
all federal institutions.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. If there's more, we'll have to come back to you, Ms. Kelly. Dong, you have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses for coming today. And I want to say to Mr. Desjardins, your opening remarks really touched me, and it's not news to us, but I really admire that you have a very focused purpose of being in this place, and not just this committee, but the House as well. I mean, we've been through this many times, and I see the consistency in the persistence in your pursuit. And I think all members are sort of felt it and after the same thing. But let's get to the specifics. Commissioner Kelly, what really stood out for me is when I read the report, the custody rating scale has not been updated since 2012, and the one I think for offenders hasn't been updated at all. Like, why is this? Why? What are you doing to change that? Because it's an important tool to determine the level of security.
It's absolutely an important tool. And actually, the CRS, the development of the custody rating scale, was in response to a recommendation from the Auditor General back in 1994. And that's why we developed the custody rating scale. It's what I can say as well, it's been empirically tested, and Larry could speak to that many, many times. What we're doing, however, is for Indigenous offenders, we have an MOU with the University of Regina, and they're working at arm's length to develop an Indigenous-informed, gender-informed security classification process. So, because there are certain factors that are gender neutral, like age, criminal history,
Yeah,
but
I get that part.
they're going to look at more gender responsive and culturally specific factors as well.
I appreciate that. And sorry, I have to cut you off from time to time, and I don't mean no disrespect. But is there any timeline on that?
Yes. So
When are we?
it's a 5-year MOU, and we're into the 3rd year.
So it'll be another 2 years before the final product or like updated CRS be able to be used?
Larry, you have
Another
more of
2
the
years?
timelines.
Yes, well, the timelines on the validation exercise on black men, there aren't enough black women in custody to actually do a validation study. We only have 19 in the whole country, so, but we have substantial number of black men. We've downloaded data. We're working with external experts. The timeline on that is December of this year, and we're well underway with that exercise.
So 2 years for Indigenous offenders,
That's right.
and by the end of this year for black
Well, we're only looking at one tool.
Right.
The custody rating scale for specifically for black men, a validation study.
Okay,
We're
so
looking at the entire process for Indigenous women.
that leads to my second question. And I noticed the report says 30% of these assessments used, based on the CRS, were overridden, and half of it resulting in a higher level of security. What does that say to us? Is it because this CRS is not effective enough?
Not necessarily. It means there could be other reasons for overriding the scale. For example, it's an initial placement. One needs to realize that upon admission, they might not have a lot of criminal history, but they could have other kinds of factors that would preclude them to maybe being raised in their security level. For example, gang affiliation would be a good one. It doesn't really sensitive to that tool, that aspect, but if there's other information that comes to the awareness of a parole officer, they may recommend a higher level of custody than what the custody rating scale would say.
Yeah, so that explains the 50% that probably receive
Higher.
the same, higher security level. But shouldn't that all be like already considered within the CRS?
It can be, but again, it's one tool, and not all tools are perfect, but we have about a concordance rate of around 75%, which is pretty accurate. It's a good benchmark. And, you need to anchor your assessments, which are highly professionally based, on something that's objective and it's individualized. So
By the
Very,
time
very
that they're-
briefly, Mr. Dong. Very, very briefly.
Okay, by the time they're updated, will we see the 30% overriding rate be dropped lower?
yeah, actually, we have observed that in the last year. It's
Okay.
come down quite a bit. It's more around
What's the percentage?
25%.
25%, okay.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Mr. Villemure, pardon, vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief. Ms. Hogan, you've said on numerous occasions, and we've been able to read your reports. Have the reports been understood? I think that you have members of Correctional Services Canada who could better answer the question. I can say that I'm frustrated. It's been at least 4 times since 2015 that we raise very concerning results that have to do with race and ethnicity of offenders. This systematic process continues to generate negative outcomes for offenders. It needs to be addressed. Thank you. Ms. Kelly, I'm going to come back to you with the same question. You have a representation that is good in some cases. Now, representation doesn't signify understanding. Last fall, Radio-Canada reported that something 2.8% who've participated were. I don't know that they've understood, but they're not very many. Can you comment on this? With regard to training, I do have some figures on diversity, and they are better than what you've referred to. I don't entirely agree that in the last 5 years, or at least I believe that outcomes are improving. It does take time, and as I mentioned, when it comes to who enters our institutions, we don't control that. We start controlling once they are in our institutions. We offer programs. So with the cultural changes, you're trying to go from very bad to bad? Cultural change? You earlier talked about affecting cultural change. So you're trying to move from very bad to bad? No, I wouldn't say it's very bad or bad. I'd say that we are an organization of some 18,000 employees, and we have employees who are dedicated, committed, and who understand the mission of correctional services. So there are only some, 480 that have taken the training. Well, I don't have the most recent data. I apologize. Your time is up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I do want to thank my colleagues on both sides for what I think is a very important questioning and your patience for what is a very difficult study for me. I've been on the opposite end of this for a long time, and I have only seen it get worse. You can call it what you want, you can say improvements are being made, but the reality is you made an important statement, Commissioner, that the number is increasing. And I don't necessarily believe the correction services is to blame. I believe, like many Indigenous folks, that this is a holistic problem that will require a holistic solution, and you may mention that in your remarks, and I appreciate that. But I also recognize is that your department has also accepted this in the past. Absent from me being here, your predecessor sat here and agreed 3 times to the Auditor General's recommendations to make things better. The TRC has now been out for a long time, since your entire appointment, and I'm sure the gentleman with you as well. They probably, I'm not even sure if you've even read it, and that's the question I'd like to know, is what is your literacy in terms of the TRC? Do you know what the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action number 35 is? Larry, perhaps?
Well, not specifically number 35. I'm well aware of some of the recommendations and
okay, what about Alan? Do you know what 35 is?
Yes. So for us, it's around correctional programs. It's around healing and a holistic approach. It's around Section 81 healing lodges because it's seen as a barrier. It's the
Commissioner, why doesn't your colleagues know what that is when it's the one core mandate of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for your department? How is it that this isn't the central piece to your work when 70% of Indigenous people are incarcerated and under your charge? How is it that at this level you come to a committee where a study on Indigenous incarceration, the overrepresentation of Indigenous people, and your senior bureaucrats don't know what I'm talking about? can you admit that that's a failure and how we need to actually see Indigenous people need to have trust and need to be able to see that the officials in charge of these systems care? And when I hear things like that, you have to share in my disappointment.
You give the witness a few moments to answer, please, and I'll have to move on. But Commissioner Kelly, over to you for a quick answer.
I can assure you that, you know, we often say, we talk about this, that the greatest responsibility is having the care of other human beings. And as far as, you know, they committed crimes, but for us, and it includes Indigenous offenders, it includes Black offenders, it includes all offenders. We want to work with them basically to ensure that they are better when they are released. And the one thing I do want to say...
I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I am sorry. I need to be judicious with the clock as much as possible, but I'm sure there'll be another opportunity. Mr. Jennings, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So there's policy, there's the objectives, there's questions of values, and then there's the question of implementation. And I think we've had a lot of thoughtful and moving comments made about policy, about ideas, about values. Usually in this committee we deal with implementation, and I want to really drill into that in my questions, because for 8 years the government has been talking about, as a policy objective, addressing the problem of overrepresentation of certain communities in our justice system. And it seems from the data that they're not addressing it. They may be talking about it, they may be sincere in their motivations, but as far as implementation goes, in fact, the needle is moving in the wrong direction as it pertains to Indigenous peoples. So we have to acknowledge that that's a failure of implementation. I wanted to start by asking the Auditor General, is it fair to say, is it correct to say that regardless of good intentions and perhaps powerful at times words from the government, that they are not making progress when it comes to the issue of responding to overrepresentation of certain communities in the criminal justice system?
So unfortunately, this audit didn't look at the entire criminal justice system, right? We started at where the responsibilities of Corrections Service Canada starts, which is once they have been found guilty and sentenced to 2 years or more and reprimanded to a federal institution. At that point, you can see from the statistics in our report that representation from Indigenous peoples is growing.
Mm-hmm. So things are actually getting worse. So whatever the strategy is being tried by the government, whatever the intentions that are forming it, the results are getting worse. And thank you for clarifying that you're looking at what happens to people once they're already in prison, not the factors that may contribute to getting them there. But in terms of the data you looked at, in terms of the way people are treated once they're in prison, the overrepresentation problems in terms of the various ways people are treated are still getting worse over time.
Well, I would point you to the Exhibit 4.1, which looks at sort of a linear representation over 10 years of the changing demographics in federal institutions to look at that. And then what we then looked at was are the outcomes or the goals of correction services to rehabilitate individuals and reinsert them into the community being effective. And that's where we saw still differing outcomes based along race and ethnicity.
Thank you. So to the folks at Correction Services Canada, when you hear that and you look at these numbers, is your approach to say, well, we need to just do more of the same? Or is your approach to say, my goodness, something fundamental about what we're doing isn't working and we need to reorient our strategy dramatically?
I would say it's a little bit of both, that we need to...
I don't know how that's possible, but sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, it's just that, for example, when we introduced Indigenous Intervention Centers, it was with a purpose. It was with the purpose of ensuring that when they are admitted, that immediately they can start a program, that they start working with the elder if they want to return to their Indigenous community. They work with an Indigenous liaison officer so that they can liaise with the Indigenous community. So we've done a number of things. We also, like I said,
Sorry. What I want to just focus on, though, is, like, I don't have the expertise to know if those things you talked about are the right things to do or not the right things to do. I just can look at the results and say, like, some of these new strategies you're talking about, are they things you've been at for a while? Because if you've been at them for a while and they aren't working, you know, maybe it's not the full picture or something else, right? So I guess the question I'm trying to drill down on is, are you seeing that this isn't working, we need to try something else, or are some of these things you're talking about kind of brand new strategies that you're putting forward to try to address what's not worked up until now?
Well, some of them are brand new. Like I said, the Virtual Correctional Program Delivery Initiative, we're really excited about it because we believe that it's going to allow for more timely access to program, which is essential. It is critical that offenders complete programs because they have a better chance of succeeding in the community. Alain and I met with 3 chiefs in the community, the Nicanite First Nation, Beardy, and Fort Hills Capel as well, Tribal Council. And we talked about, and actually I'm going with Chief Ananas to meet with him, but we're actually reaching out to the community. We have Indigenous recruitment officers that actually go into the community to try to recruit Indigenous people.
I think I might be out of time. I'll just say quickly, I appreciate your sincerity. In 8 years,
we're well over the time. Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Shipp, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you for coming and answering some very tough questions. This is both heartbreaking and frustrating because we've heard these same issues before. In your opening remarks, Ms. Kelly, you mentioned that the CSC has been working to develop a national Black offender strategy. What work has been done to launch this strategy?
So first of all, we've developed a ethnocultural action framework. There's some training, diversity and cultural competency, and actually the results are good in terms of people that have participated. We also have qualitative research that we've done with the University of Nipissing, where actually they're talking to Black offenders to get their lived experiences, though that's going to inform our policies and practices going forward. We also have an ethnocultural advisory committee that's very, very active. And one thing that we're piloting is the Black offender social history. So similar to the Indigenous social history, we're looking at the Black offender social history, and this is something that they're quite excited about. So these are the types of things, and reaching out to the communities. Because one thing, both for Indigenous and Black offenders, it's very important that it's fairly well structured in the institution. They have access to programs, to elders, but when they go back out to their community, sometimes the supports aren't there. So we're doing an outreach initiative as well to be able to bring in the communities in the institution so they can offer support when the offenders are released.
So you've talked about the qualitative part, but what about data, the collection of disaggregated data in this strategy?
So we collect data specifically for Black offenders. We have that. We always look at overall Indigenous and Black as well. So we have that data. And actually, as I mentioned before, in terms of the percentage of Black inmates in custody, it's gone down. It used to be 9.2, it's gone down to 8.7. And Black offenders, when they are released, actually do better than the overall population. And for Indigenous offenders, I just wanted to say that they do well too. We've seen an improvement. It used to be in the kind of in the 70s, high 70s, but now it's 83.5%.
Why do you think that they're doing better? And why is it, why are there programs that are more targeted in the issues? I'm just trying to compare it to the Indigenous statistics that you just mentioned.
So this is something that we're actually looking at. Why? Because we see that Black offenders, as the Auditor General mentioned, they tend to get placed initially at maximum security. It's slightly higher than for overall offenders, and they complete programs. But when they are released, they tend to do quite well. So this is something that we need to look into further. I don't know, Larry, if you want to add.
Yeah, well, we have what we call our integrated correctional program model in a number of streams. Some are for Aboriginal specific delivery. One's called a multi-target program. One's actually directed towards sex offenders. And we have in general, for all offenders, a multi-target program and one for sex offenders as well. We also have institutional maintenance. We also have community maintenance, and we think, and we see from our evaluations, substantial reductions in reoffending and returns to custody. So we think that's contributing to successful reintegration rate at the moment. And now we're unpacking that data for different groups, in particular for Black offenders, to examine out of that data, how are they benefiting from these programs as well.
Ms. Ship, a very brief question with a very brief answer.
Can you tell us more about the 30% figure in terms of overriding? What can be improved?
And again, I'll just press a brief answer only, please.
Okay, so for the overriding, the concordance rate between the custody rating scale and the overall offender security level is 75%. But so then there's 25% that for Black offenders, they are underridden to lower security in 16% of the time and overridden to higher security in 9% of the time.
Thank you very much. Going on to our third round, it is my intention to get to a fourth round, but it will be truncated with probably only 3 minutes per member. But for this next one, it's a full 5 minutes for government and official opposition members and the normal time for the third party. Turn now to Mr. McCauley. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Mr. Williams. And Mr. Desilets, I appreciate your comments. And one of the issues out on the several visits I've made to the Women's Penitentiary in our riding, one is, allowing open drug use. One is allowing predatory males on site. But a big one, and Mr. Desilets brought it up, is a lack of facilities in Western Canada. And you've talked about Indigenous recruitment. We don't have a school in Western Canada to train women CSC employees. They have to go out east. I made a request to the government 2 years ago, no response. This is obviously a vital issue, and I think would go a very long way to solving some of these systemic issues. And this is a perfect example of a systemic issue that we know about that we are forcing upon the system. Is CSC considering a school so that we can recruit local Indigenous from the prairies to help out, but also is there plans for another facility in Western Canada so we're not uprooting family? Family support is very important. It's impossible for many of these families to come out from even neighboring Saskatchewan to visit and give support. Are there plans for that?
So you're absolutely right. In speaking with Indigenous people, the one thing they said is it's really difficult for them we have an academy in PEI and we have an academy in Kingston for training. And they feel that they don't want to be away from their families.
I'm aware of that, and I just stated that.
Exactly.
So thanks for repeating what I said, but please, the question, is there plans to have a school on the prairies?
So what we did during COVID, because we didn't want people to travel, we started back our regional training at our regional facilities. So obviously that helps, so that
Long-term plan to set up a school so you can properly recruit Indigenous women from the prairies.
this is
and more
something
importantly,
we've
from
been
Edmonton.
discussing.
Is it past the discussion stage? What will take it, or what will it take to get past discussion stage?
Well, at this point, like I said, we're discussing it, but as
So
as
not
a
right now.
result of COVID, though, there is training that's happening in the prairie region.
Couple quick questions for you. I look at staffing levels. Since 2017, staffing for CSEs increased 9%. Overall public service is almost 30% increase. Are you getting the resources that you need? We're hiring everywhere in the public service overwhelmingly, but CSE has barely budged.
Well, again, we have a staff complement of approximately 18,000. What's difficult right now, obviously, COVID has been really, really hard on everybody.
COVID hasn't stopped the government from hiring 30% more. Do you have the resources? Have you been given the marching orders from the government to address any staffing issues?
We have the resources, and actually through, with Bill C-83, we got resources for structured intervention units and also for enhanced health care.
How many CSUs were built then?
Pardon me?
How many of the CSUs were built in, say, the Women's Institution in Edmonton?
The SIUs?
Yes.
We have one in every women's facility.
Okay. Just real last quick question, and this to the AG as well, maybe. Mr. Brock was getting at, like, the inflow of Indigenous and other communities into the prison system is very heavily weighted, it seems, more violent offenders. Like, are we adjusting for that, or are we just continuing on like Mr. Dong brought up, the system that you have to allocate to maximum minimum security hasn't been updated for years? Are we going down the wrong path when we need to address this influx of perhaps overly violent offenders? Is your system preparing for that? Or are you preparing to make changes for yesterday's problems?
No, every year we do an environmental scan. We look at what's coming. We look at, and it's Dr. Mochiak that does that with his team. We look at the population profile, the forecast, and obviously then we prepare for that. But as I said, the other main thing is that there's going to be an Indigenous-informed, gender-informed security classification process for Indigenous offenders. Pardon me?
When?
We're in the third year. It's a 5-year MOU with the University of Regina.
And thank you. That is the time. Ms. Bradford, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. MP Desjardins, I hear your pain, and I share your concern. So I'm from Kitchener-South Hespeler, and we have the Grand Valley Institution for Women there. And I had the opportunity of visiting it last June. And the plight of Indigenous women there, I'm very concerned. The vast majority of the population in that prison are Indigenous women from out west. Would you happen to know the figures on that? What percentage?
The percentage at Grand Valley?
Yes.
No, I don't have that with
Okay.
me.
So it is the only federal prison for women in Ontario. And so many of these offenders originate from out west because there's not facilities enough there for them. So they're uprooted from their community and where they would have their support there. Many of them are mothers. So, you know, they come all the way over to Ontario, you know, 3 or 4 provinces away to serve their sentence. Can you talk about the mother-child program there and what efforts are made to allow them to keep their children? So these are people, of course, that are, you know, at least 2 years sentence.
So we have a mother-child. It's and it's been in existence for quite some time. children can stay. We work with family services, first of all, and children can stay with their mothers at the institution when they're preschool. And then once they reach school age, it can be on a part-time basis. And it's a program, obviously, that we promote. I think it's good for mothers if they are able to keep their child with them, like I said, until school age.
Is it offered to every mother that has a preschool child? Is this program made available to every mother? Is there capacity for that?
Well, first of all, they need to meet certain criteria. So it depends. It depends on the offense, because if it was an offense against a child, they wouldn't meet the criteria. And again, we work very, very closely with child services.
Concern is with this scoop in the history in this country of separating Indigenous children from their families of origin, this is a concern. So what I learned is the Kitchener community is quite supportive of the female prisoners that we have there. There are a number of employers that offer them employment opportunities because some of them are able to go out and work in the community. There's a very, very lovely restaurant in particular that supports them. And Elizabeth Fry Society does as well. But what happens is when they're released, there are no halfway houses in our area. So then they get uprooted again and moved even further east over to Kingston. So all those support services that were there supporting them during their 4 years or whatever, they're uprooted again, moved even further away. Not only that, in order to get their children back, they have to prove that they can provide a home accommodation. And of course, we know these days hardly anybody can afford to do that, let alone someone that's just coming out of a penitentiary system. So the heartbreaking thing here, I mean, you know, these people obviously made a bad choice at some point, but you know, they could end up losing their children forever because of a mistake they made when they were younger. And we keep moving them further and further away from their supports, you know, their original ones and then the ones they established in our community. And then, so what can be done to address this? Because it just seems that we're making a problem worse.
So in regards to transfers, sometimes transfers occur because there's a particular reason. Maybe the woman at Grand Valley would no longer be safe. That's why she's transferred. But when they are closer to release, normally we look at their release plan. And if a woman's release plan is in the Pacific region in BC, and that's where she has her community supports, normally we would transfer the woman closer so she can be released in an environment where she's going to have support.
And that, I'm afraid, Ms. Bradford, that is the time, and we're a little over. Next, Mr. Villemur, on me dit que tu vas passer votre temps. Oui. Mr. Digely. Mr. Digely, you have the floor for 5 minutes, then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank my Bloc Québécois colleague and albeit all my colleagues for what I think is a very important line of questioning, because I think this is, what I'm hearing is that we care about this issue, all of us, and I really hope, I really, really, really hope we don't have to return to this audit again in the way it is. And that is more than a challenge, that's a demand, because it's a demand of just basic morality, basic levels of understanding of this issue that I still don't have confidence that CSC has. The cultural competency from the top to do this work correctly. And that is why so many Indigenous people feel neglected, not heard. And I want to know what actions you've taken to educate your own selves about the history of this country. You spoke at great length and mentioned it 6 or 7 times now, this Indigenous social history. And I made remarks at the very beginning to clarify that this is not an Indigenous or Black problem. This is a Canadian problem. how we think of fellow human beings. And the TRC is clear about many of these outcomes. And I just wish 5 minutes, read it, 5 minutes, memorize it. Because people have died for those things. Just 5 minutes. There's not that many. There's 7 calls to action for your department. 7 calls to action. I need confidence today that when I leave this room, that you're going to do something about your own learning, that you're going to make efforts to rebuild that trust. I might not be here forever. You might be able to wait me out. But I'd hope that you can remember this for as long as you possibly can in your service to Canadians, that these are real people too, and they deserve a chance. Do you know the history of this country well enough to understand why these people are in the position they are in? And if not, that's okay. We can help. The government bench is here. The opposition will support. What resources do you need to change this? Do you know the history of colonization in this country?
Yes, I would say we do, and I would also say we care. We care. We care about ensuring that the offenders that come into our custody, that we offer them what they require so they don't return to custody. Because if they return to custody, for us, that's a failure. We want them to stay in the community. That's why we have National Elders Working Group. That's why we have national advisory, Indigenous advisory committees that provide advice to me. That's why I invite all of you to come into our institutions to see what is happening.
I have, and that's the problem, Commissioner. They're worse. They're not working. I'm telling you, Indigenous people are being left behind, and something needs to change. It needs to change at the top. And if you don't believe you have the resources to do this job, we need to know. And I need to know that there's confidence that you have, that you understand the issue well. And I told you again, this isn't a matter of blaming people, it's a matter of understanding. There's a failure here. We're talking about the failure of your department. We're not talking about the success of your department. We're talking about the abject and overt objective failure. Not that I'm saying this. The Auditor General, the top independent office in this country, has told you you failed many, many, many times over. And there needs to be confidence. I need that. Indigenous people need that, to know that these systems aren't a sham, that you can contract a university to do the work that should be done by Indigenous community members. I don't have to talk about that today, but something I hope you take seriously, that community members are the ones who know best. And the TRC, if you'd read it, actually says that. Call to Action 37 makes explicit note that it doesn't say consult with the universities, it doesn't say consult with the government, it doesn't say consult with other persons. It says that, or sorry, not 37, 36, or sorry, 38, that you need to find ways to do that. Consult
Thank you
directly with community members.
very much, Mr. Desjardins. Thank you. Turning now to Mr. Cram, who's been very patient.
We're going to
Up
start.
there.
Even more patient.
Mr. Genuous, so over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask about something that's not in the report, which is spiritual care or chaplaincy services in prisons. We've heard from various groups about access of minority faiths and to that system. I'm of the view certainly that chaplaincy services are very important, and ensuring that people from different faith backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds are able to access chaplaincy services that provides them with spiritual support is important. I don't often quote Nietzsche favorably, but I do think he was right to say he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how, and a sense of a person's a sense of the purpose of life, a sense of someone's ultimate meaning. I think plays a very important role in rehabilitation. So maybe start with the Auditor General, if you were able to identify any inequalities in access to spiritual care or issues around representation in within the provision of those services, and then if it wasn't part of your work, then we'll go to corrections after that.
So we didn't focus in on that writ large across the entire offender population, but we did look at whether or not culturally appropriate and restorative options were considered for Indigenous offenders, such as healing lodges or work with elders. And really that whole concept of considering Indigenous social history, which has been codified into legislation and should be done, for us what was concerning is we had looked at a group of files, about 20 files, where we had seen the custody rating scale being overridden and the Indigenous offender being placed in a higher security institution, and we saw no evidence of their Indigenous social history being considered in those 20 files. There was no documentation of it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but we saw no proof of it happening, and that's why we recommended that more needs to be done around overrides, but also codifying and solidifying, considering Indigenous social history in the way it's supposed to be considered, not to be more punitive, but to help for better restoration.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, I think that discussion of social history is distinct from the discussion of spiritual care, but thank you for sharing some of that work that was done. Maybe the folks at Corrections could share a bit about the relationship between chaplaincy and ensuring that access to those services is available to everybody.
Well, we certainly value our chaplains. They do a lot. And so we have, it's Bridges of Canada that basically is kind of the entity, and it's the inmates, depending on their spirituality, get the spiritual advisor that they require. So we do have that, and they play a significant role.
From your perspective, is that access available if someone is, if someone is Baha'i and they say, I'm looking for this kind of spiritual support? If somebody is a Christian from a particular denomination and they're more comfortable receiving support in the context of that tradition, would you say it's working well for people from any background to be able to access support that aligns with those preferences, or are there struggles to meet people's needs in terms of that access?
I think it's better now that with Bridges, because it's really to meet the needs of the offenders, and certainly I haven't heard any complaints from on the part of offenders. I don't know if Alain, you want to add anything?
No, on this
But
one here, I
it's-
agree. Yeah.
From your perspective, everything's working very well in terms of people having that access? Because we have heard from external stakeholders that have a different perspective, but I mean, I think they will follow today's testimony and maybe have follow-up comments. But if, I just think it's important for us to hear what you're saying one way or the other. From your perspective, it's working very well in terms of people of diverse faith, ethnocultural backgrounds accessing the services that aligns with what they're looking for.
Yes, it's working.
Okay. All right. I think that's probably my time.
Yeah, just a few seconds left. So, you yield?
I suppose. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Sure.
You've got about 15
Go ahead, Kelly.
seconds.
15, oh, sorry. I think you said 50.
No.
Sorry.
15. So, all right. Thank you. Mr. Fragaskatos, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
I will, in fact, yield, Mr. Chair. I pass my time to Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferrer-Scottos. I'd like to continue to discuss how important it is to heed the advice of the folks that I met with, and in particular, the crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous women. You deal directly with women in these penitentiaries oftentimes, and the one I visit, the one that Mr. McCauley referred to, and he also went and visit, we heard the same things, I'm sure. one of the biggest calls to action, and I really want to thank Ms. Bradford for bringing it up, which is the pain that these women have. It's going to be difficult for me to say this, when they're not with their children. Many of them have children, and they've never seen them. This ever since they were taken to these systems. And the psychological pain. And I asked the question earlier about your understanding of colonization and the deep impact that has. When you lose your children, that's how you break a whole nation. One of the first steps to healing for these people need to be the establishment of those cultural traditional healing lodges. They must. I've spoken to the minister about this. He came to my riding, went and visited another penitentiary, the Stan Daniel Center, a low security prison for men. And they often talked about this as well. So I don't want to avoid the fact that these men are also suffering from this. But these women spend their entire lives, obsession in those places, thinking about where their daughter is, where their kids are, whether they're alive. Some of them have lost their children to the murdered and missing Indigenous women crisis. And they don't even get to go to the funeral. Why can't this change? What is the barrier? Why, Mr. McCauley asked, why not build the resources these women need? It's been years, decades of this kind of treatment. Reconciliation in this country is not possible until the fundamental pieces of this kind of justice is heard by people like you and deeply felt. Imagine if you never seen your children again. How painful that would be amongst a whole nation of people who've also endured that pain. What do you have to live for after that? This is a punitive system that hurts Indigenous people. I need to know what steps you're going to take to ensure that the traditional healing lodges, the model of restorative justice, better and smarter and wiser people than me have called for, to which nations like mine have built, and they've survived for thousands of years until the last, say, 100. To destroy our systems in lieu of a punishment system like this. Catastrophic. What steps are you taking to ensure the restorative justice model that is called for by Indigenous women, men, two-spirit, non-binary folks are calling for? They need to know what your action plan will be to building these traditional healing lodges. And if it's resources, please tell us, Commissioner.
So thank you for that. And as you know, we have 10 healing lodges. We have Okimauchi, which is for women. We also have Buffalo Sage and Eagle Women's Lodge that opened back in, if I'm not mistaken, in 2010. We also met with some of the chiefs, and we've discussed actually the possibility of having other healing lodges. I think that's good, and I truly believe in restorative approaches. Alain just recently had a meeting with all 10 directors of healing lodges, so I'll let him talk.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I guess, Mr. Jalal, the first comment I would like to make is I want to assure you and guarantee you that we are seized with this issue every day. Every day that we go to work, we discuss the issues that we're talking about. Every single day. That issue is as griping for us to a certain extent as it is for you. We've worked on the floor, on the ground with many, many Indigenous communities. I've heard, I've seen the pain. I do understand.
But you must recognize my frustration.
Sorry, gentlemen, I appreciate it. We're out of time, so.
Sorry,
and Mr. Disley, you have another round if you allow me to kind of stay on the clock here. Mr. Tuzing, I'm sure he'll come back to you. Turning now to Mr. McCall. No, Mr. Cram. I almost skipped over you. So you in only 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here. I was wondering if we could maybe try to step back and look at the big picture a little bit. I think that if the name of your department is Correctional Services Canada, implied in the name is that something has gone wrong in the first place. Otherwise, we wouldn't be correcting something. So I was wondering if you could step back and look at the big picture and think of all your years of experience in this sector and answer for the committee, what could be done to just have fewer people interacting with the justice system in the first place? It would be nice if we didn't have people commit crimes in the first place. It would be nice if we didn't have 15,000 people incarcerated in this country in the first place. What can we do? Do we need better education? Do we need better poverty reduction? What can be done?
Well, that's a question that goes over and above, obviously, what I do. I'm the commissioner for the Correctional Service of Canada. And as I said, for us, we actually believe, first of all, in education, programming. The other thing is we have a restorative justice sector as well. And I can tell you that that's really, really powerful. And when it's the right moment for the offender and the victim to be able to talk, I think that in the end, for the offender, it's a turning point. They tend not to recidivate again. And it's actually very successful. It's not for everybody. But that's one thing. But there are many, many other things that, again, for us, they come into our custody, we take charge, and our motto is changing lives and protecting Canadians.
That's very fair. I was not expecting an easy, simple answer. If you look at the charts, Exhibit 4.5 on page 11 and Exhibit 4.7 on page 16, that deal with parole eligibility and completing programs before parole eligibility, women consistently perform better than men by literally every metric in this report. Can you comment on why that is? Do you have particular programs that work better for women, that are designed for women, and what lessons could be learned to help male prisoners?
Well, first of all, they're fewer in numbers. We have 654 women right now, and we have 5 women's facility plus a healing lodge. The other thing, having worked myself at Prison for Women, the only prison in Canada, and having been the Deputy Commissioner for Women, when you work in a women's prison, they tend to talk a lot more, get involved, get engaged. So it is a different dynamic than in men's institution.
Thank you very much. That is the time. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor now for 3 minutes, please.
Much, Chair, and I just want to say how much I appreciate the remarks that we have heard from our colleague, Mr. Desjardins, today, especially around that this issue is not just about Indigenous, the sort of marginalization, but it's an issue of Canadian justice, and I think that the restorative justice system that we have had the privilege to learn about from First Nations people is one that can transform and will transform that justice system. That being said, we are talking about systematic barriers today, and so I would like to ask the Auditor General, one of your recommendations, Ms. Hogan, was that Correctional Service Canada should improve its collection of diversity information for offenders and ensure that the information is complete and align its collection methodology with that of Statistics Canada. Why is that?
So what we found, and as we've been hearing throughout testimony today, there's a lot of data available at Correction Service Canada. A lot of the data gathered on visible minorities didn't follow sort of the same 11 buckets that Statistics Canada uses, where then you would have a lot more data available through Statistics Canada. Correction Services uses a rating scale of 30, where an offender needs to self-identify and select from what visible minority bucket they may fall in. We heard that there was confusion, uncertainty as to what they should be ticking off. And then when we looked into the systems, we saw increasing gaps in that data actually being entered into the system. So we felt that it was important to have that disaggregated data, but in a way that was meaningful and useful, and wanted to make that recommendation to Correction Service to align with Statistics Canada, but also to be more diligent in ensuring that it's entered into the system and it's complete so that you can make well-informed decisions going forward.
It's a very interesting recommendation. Commissioner Kelly, can you speak to where CSC is at in following that recommendation? Do you agree?
Yes, and actually we've made recent progress on simplifying and defining the race categories. And as the Auditor General said, we used to have, I counted 25, but there were many. And now actually in our corporate reporting, it's down to 7.
Very good. And that is the time?
No, you've
No,
just,
got it. Good.
just
Thank
quickly,
you.
please. Thank you.
So the Auditor General has also recommended that CSC develop workforce representation. I think we've heard a little bit about why that is important, in particular, with particular attention to overrepresented groups. So can you speak to that recommendation and what CSC is doing to respond?
So for us, it's what I mentioned earlier. So we've historically exceeded the workforce availability for Indigenous people and visible minorities, but we have more work to do for persons with disabilities. And women, we're almost there. We're 51, and workforce availability is 52.6. But the other thing, though, so that in terms of the more representative of the population that we serve, this is what I was explaining, that now we have representation objectives for each institution that takes into account the population. So let's say there's 70% of Indigenous offenders in the institution. That's part of the equation. So we've set for ourselves ambitious representation objectives.
Thank you very, very much. Encore, votre tour, Monsieur Villemure. Très bien, Monsieur Desjardins. Vous avez la parole pour 3 minutes, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to my block colleague for allowing me additional time to really make certain that the conditions of these places are understood fairly on behalf of Canadians. And I, to be frank, would wish that the Commissioner was more frank and I'd say transparent with the reality of how these places look and the resources they get. Because I can't name one person I've met in my entire life working with Indigenous people, living in community, that have had an opportunity to heal that the way they would have wanted to. So that we have a long ways to go. We're only in the very infant stages of understanding this country's history in a way that provides a level of justice and a playing field that would be fair in the consideration of these traumas. TRC call to action number 36 is in relation to the survivors of sexual abuse. Survivors of sexual abuse and the intersectionality between survivors of sexual abuse and colonialism are great. It doesn't take much other than asking many of our residential school survivors to talk about that experience. They were children in the most vulnerable positions, taken advantage of because of this country's policies. Now, a kind of injustice that still is pervasive in our population today. Few criminal charges have ever been laid against those perpetrators. But they get to walk out in the free world here in Canada, many of them still amongst us. But these women have to stay in prison. The call to action asks you to look into the effects of that and to build resources and supports for survivors of sexual abuse. And to bring that into your understanding of their experiences in those places. Our justice system is unjust. And I don't think I have to tell you that, Commissioner Kelly. You know you have to deal with the unfortunate realities of a broken justice system and one of the hardest rules in our country. And the attempt to find ways to do the work of healing when this country has done so much damage. And you hear probably, if you've spoken to the women, how unjust it feels for them to be attacked constantly their entire lives and then to be left in the position they are. Well, their perpetrators get to walk. It's clear that our systems are overrepresenting Indigenous and Black folks. But they also need to find ways to represent that these people are living a traumatic life of their own and are forced by our policy.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Turning now to Mr. McCall, you have the floor for 3 minutes, please.
Thanks. I just want to follow up, Ms. Kelly, just when we talk about more facilities for women on the prairies, what is the plan going forward? You know, if I look at the Women's Institute in Edmonton, clearly it's not conducive to proper healing, and that is the majority of the women in that facility are Indigenous. It's not working. What is the plan going forward? Is it more healing lodges along those lines? Institutionalizing them is not working. What are we going to do to address this?
So we have Edmonton Institution for Women and we have Okimauchi. So one of the things that when actually Alain met with all the Healing Lodge directors is for those where it makes sense is to transfer them to a Healing Lodge. And like I said, we have Buffalo Sage and Eagles Women's Lodge as well.
When you say for those that make sense, like
where for those that meet the criteria to go to a Healing Lodge.
Because I've been through it, because we have medium, minimum, and you know the maximum in the one facility. Is it to move out everyone in minimum and medium?
So Okimauchi is both minimum and medium.
It's not going to work.
Is both minimum and medium. Yeah. So there are offenders that we can look at transferring from.
But let me ask, and I'm showing my ignorance here, as I often do in this committee, but what is it going to take then? If I look at the facility in Edmonton, there's just down from my office, say 70% are Indigenous at any one time, 60 to 80. 70%, how many are there because we haven't made the move to create more facilities and better facilities, more appropriate facilities? Like I'm sensing we've got this Healing Lodge, but I don't sense a will to say we've got maybe 50 women at Edmonton Institution that we should move out immediately to more, whether culturally appropriate or better healing for them. Like, what's it going to take? You've said we have all the resources, we have all the staffing we need.
Our facilities, we always review the population, and there are certain, again, timelines that we need to meet. So security classification are reviewed, and if they're reviewed and a woman is now medium security, then we can look at transferring to Okimauchi. So that's something it's an ongoing process, review process.
Do we have enough capacity at the at such lodges then? Do we need more lodges? Do we need more in the prairies, close to Edmonton, close to our major centers?
If I may, I think creating a healing lodge, we also need the community to be willing and be on board with wanting to create a healing lodge in this section. We do have
communities then.
Yeah, we do have
Could you
people.
present to this committee then the communities you're working with to try and create this expanded capacity?
Yes, and actually, the chiefs that we met we discussed that actually, and often they themselves will say.
Commissioner Kelly, I'm gonna have to cut you off, but I wanted to just get a response to Mr. Kelly's request for documents, and you're welcome to explain anything in that document that you'll send in if you like, but I do need to watch the clock. And our last member we're going to hear from today is Mr. Dong. You have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting topic, but I kind of feel sorry that there were a lot of pointed questions towards Commissioner Kelly because, for individuals who end up in your care, there has been a series of failures in that individual's life in different stages. But so the question about better education, better programming, and a social, it's all good questions. But I doubt if you have much control over that person's earlier part of that person's life. But you do have responsibility when the person enters your control. I looked at the portion where it talked about preparation for release, and that touched upon the correctional part of it. And there is, shocking stats for Indigenous population that that somehow they got delayed in getting paroles or released early compared to other individuals. Why is that? Like, is it because of lack of resource to prepare for their release, or, I just can't understand.
So there's a few things, obviously, again, and I don't want to use it as an excuse, but with COVID-19, it was more difficult to deliver programs. But with Indigenous offenders, as I mentioned when I talked about the profile, they have fairly high needs, and so they require more intensive programming. And we have, with Indigenous offenders, although the sentences are getting longer, there are also some that are serving shorter sentences. So we don't have very much time to try to provide this intensive programming. So that's why sometimes there are delays. What we've put in place, though, is we've introduced a prioritization tool so that offenders that have an upcoming release are getting prioritized to get into the program. The other thing is that,
you just reminded me, I was going to ask another question. Like, we saw the introduction of mandatory sentencing. Did that contribute an increase in numbers of people being incarcerated? Do you know by stats?
Larry?
No, not really. The mandatory minimums, is that what you're referring to? I mean, for certain crimes, those that come to federal corrections are serving 2 years or over.
Oh, so you guys don't have, okay, that targeted that. Okay, so, sorry, going back to the correctional part, is there anything as legislators,
Very
as
brief, Mr.
members,
Don, please.
Government can do to help you in that stage of correction, or maybe more resource to prepare early release for the Indigenous population?
Well, obviously, if we had more resources, we could do more. But the one thing is, for Indigenous offenders, what we've done, it's an automatic review as soon as they complete a correctional program. Automatic review for a review of their security level to see if they could be moved to a lower security. For Indigenous offenders, because they are overrepresented.
Okay. And thank you very much. I'm afraid that is our time today. I appreciate everyone's comments, heartfelt comments as well, and the cooperation amongst committee members to split time. I want to thank the Commissioner and your team for being here today, the Auditor and your team for being here today. I also just want to take a moment to recognize we have a delegation actually in from several countries, Senegal, Rwanda, and Vietnam. And I'm asking committee members to just hold back for a few minutes. We'd like to get a photo with some of these I believe, auditors and lawmakers who are in learning what I think I'll call best practices from auditing. So welcome to cold, wintry Canada. You've actually come at a bit of a temperature break. Last week it was minus 25. Today I think we're maybe around zero. With that, I will adjourn, or I will adjourn today's meeting, and again urge members just to hold back for a few minutes. Thank you.